So welcome to our Impact Breakfast, and here's Bridget McGowan.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. Good morning, and let's get started with Master Your Message, a go-getter's guide to presenting with executive presence. There are some people to whom you could listen for hours on end. Perhaps it is the anchor on the evening news. Or maybe it's a politician. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it is your favorite recording artist, and you think to yourself, if I could just have a little bit of what she does, if I could have a smidge of what he possesses, I could be so explosive when I take to the microphone. By the time we're finished with this session, you are going to have a strategy, a sharp and smart, focused strategy for designing presentations and delivering presentations with executive presence. You are going to be able to get on a stage, take to a microphone, start a meeting in a way that shows how fierce you are. You are going to have people stepping back and looking at you and saying, man, she is all that and a bag of what? By the conclusion of this session, you are going to know the number one thing you must do in order to get adults to listen to you. You're also going to know how to have a solid handle on owning the stage and rocking the mic and controlling the room. And you're going to accomplish this by, one, knowing what it means to have an executive presence. Also, we're going to do a little bit of paradigm shifting with your presenter point of view. That is very important. And then finally, you will have an easy-to-follow 5-step guide to making presentations with executive presence. My name is Bridget McGowan, and what I do is I help professionals be the most engaging, dynamic, incredible communicators ever. Stop me at any time with your questions along the way. However, I have a question for you. What exactly is this thing called executive presence? Stand if you know the definition of executive presence. And I see a little leeriness. Well, you can't see leeriness. I see it in your face. I saw a couple of eyebrows go up. This is what I want you to do. Stand if you know the definition of executive presence, and then tell your definition to anyone who's seated. Stand if you have a rough definition of executive presence. And then, oh my God, what? Okay, this is fabulous. Okay, this is good. I love this. I love this. Share your definition with anyone who's seated. And you're going to have to do quadruple duty, but I want you to share it amongst a few tables nearby you. I want as many people as possible to hear you. Go. All right, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Who heard a fantastic definition? Superb. Let me hear it. What did you hear? And tell me your name. Confidence, yes. Anything else? Thank you, Maria. Engaging. Anything else? Bonica, thank you. Anybody else? What else? Engaging, confidence. What were y'all talking about? Work in the room. Having a presence about you. Executive presence means you have a temperament. You have a set of competencies. You have a skill set where when they are perfectly combined, when they come together just the right way, then you give off the right signal. And you know that in order to get ahead, in order to influence others, in order to drive results, you must have executive presence. So in short, what executive presence is, or what it means, is your ability to command a room. That's all it means, is your ability to walk into a room with your shoulders back and your head up and your chin out and your eyes are laser focused, and there's everything about you that says, you've got this. And you're telling yourself that. But executive presence is simply put your ability to command the room. But there's a problem. Sometimes executive presence just doesn't show up. It just doesn't come to us. We're going to do a 3, 2, 1 shout out. I want you to personally think of answers to this question. What causes executive presence to just kind of remain at bay? What causes executive presence to just kind of not make an appearance? I want you to think about your answers to that question. And at your table, I indicate you're to discuss with 3 colleagues. Just discuss with those who are at your table. What are some reasons executive presence just does not show up? And then you're going to shout out the number 1 reason you believe it doesn't show up sometimes. Time starts now. 2 minutes.
Nervousness.
What causes executive presence to just kind of stay back? Uncertainty. The monotone projection. I am doing a webinar later today and talking about that very topic. How in the world could somebody talk like... Monotone projection. Thank you, Margot. Anybody else? Insecurities. Tell me your name. Henri. Insecurities. Yes. What else? The 5 steps that I give you are all about preparation. And there's one huge one where you're going to look at me and say, really, Bridget, that was the huge one? But I'm telling you, the 5th one is so huge. I'm hoping you'll feel me when we get to it. You're not feeling me yet. It's so huge. That's part of the preparation. Tell me your name, please. Thank you, Michael. Yes, all of this is why executive presence can just kind of hang back off stage and let you do your thing. Now, when it comes to presenting, period, it can be scary. Let's be clear about it. You've got all these people out here. You're up here at the front of the room, and you've got all of those eyes out there looking at you. And your body is thinking, whoa, what if they don't like what I have to say? What if they throw a question at me to which I don't have the answer? What if I have not properly prepared? What if I don't sound like I know what I'm talking about? All of the fears, all of the insecurities, all of that shows up. And what happens is that's that self-talk that beats you down and keeps the executive presence at bay. Deep down inside, we all want to be liked. We want to be loved on some levels. We want to be revered. And similarly, we want our ideas to be liked. We want our ideas to be revered. And the possibility of getting on a stage and having all of those eyes looking at us, and you know those eyes, they can be mean and nasty sometimes. And it is hard to stand up straight and command the room. And then your body will go into a fight or flight type of situation. The body starts to react because the emotions are taking over, the self-talk is taking over, and you just don't know what to do with yourself. Oftentimes, what happens is there has to be a paradigm shift, and you have to rethink how you think about presentations. I need you to complete these sentences for me. Just jot down on your own notepad your word that you would put in each of the 3 sentences that I give you on this slide. When I have to engage in public speaking, I blank it. Write one word that you would put in that blank. We're going to talk about this paradigm shifting that must happen in order to get executive presence. When I have to engage in public speaking, I blank it. Write down that one word that completes that sentence. Next sentence. If I had to describe the kind of public speaker I am, then I would write blank. If I had to describe the kind of public speaker I am, I would write blank. And then finally, when I stand in front of an audience, now one more set of sentences for you. When I get to show how amazing are my ideas, how amazing is my vision, how amazing is the information I'm sharing, I blank it, fill in the blank. We're not talking about making a presentation, providing information, providing ideas, amazing ideas. If I had to describe the kind of person I am when I am in a position to help, to change, to transform, to grow other people, then I would write if I had to describe the kind of person I am when I have the opportunity to help, to grow, to push forward, to transform, to set on fire others, I would write. And then finally, when I get the opportunity to get people excited about what I do, who I am, why I do it, how I do it, why they need to get on board, I'm just getting people excited. How do you feel? You see where I'm rolling with this one. Negative views are problematic. Negative self-talk is going to raise anxiety. Negative self-talk is through the roof with anxiety, and when anxiety is through the roof, then executive presence is out the door. When negative talk is on the incline, then executive presence is on the decline. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you say this, I'm a terrible public speaker, oh, I hate talking. When you think like that, then it becomes a terrible experience. It becomes a negative experience. What tends to work together are those emotions and those words and those actions. And if you're thinking one thing, that is exactly what's going to end up being delivered. They're going to intersect with each other, and your audience is going to get the experience that you are thinking and feeling inside. So what we must do is reframe the brain and have a paradigm shift. So instead of being a public speaker, no, you are an amazing somebody. You're an expert in a certain area. You have a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of expertise, different types of experiences that have positioned you to know what you're talking about, to lead a team, to provide transformation. So instead of, I'm a certain kind of public speaker, oh no, you're somebody who's providing information that's going to lead to a transformation, that's going to lead to some changes, because you don't want people to be exactly the same as they were when they met you when they leave. Does that make sense? You don't want your teams to have the same attitude, the same philosophy, the same approach to work as they had at 8 o'clock by 9 o'clock. See, that's what you're doing, is you're getting up there and you're moving people to act. You are moving people to have impact. You are not standing in front of an audience, but what you are doing is you're getting a chance to get people very excited about what's to come, about what's on the agenda, about what's planned. Remember this, if nothing else, and then you can go about the work of having the executive presence. Remember, the audience is not hoping that you're going to flop. Now, let me back up for a second and just be real. You know you have some of those people, no matter what day of the week it is, they would frown at the sight of rainbows, puppies, and lilies in a field. You can't do anything about those people. They have their own issues going on. You just got to hope they work it out some kind of way. So for the most part, audiences are hoping you do well. They are cheering you on. Those that are sitting there with that look on their faces, you just hope that they are able to find a friend later on and get it together. So that's the first part of the work in establishing executive presence, is working on the mindset and making sure that you understand what it is you are getting up here doing, is you are facilitating change. That's what you're doing. You're not making a presentation. You're not giving a report. You are facilitating something exciting that is going to move people to do something differently and positively. So that's the first step. Regardless of the 5 steps I'm about to give you, you must first do that. Now let's get into that go-getter's guide, the 5 steps. I have a poll for you. Is this true or false? The 4 most important things to focus on when establishing executive presence as you're preparing for a presentation are: 1, how you will articulate your message; 2, who is in the audience; 3, what it is you want the audience to accomplish; and 4, how you will engage the audience in a conversation. The 4 most important things are the articulation of your message, the audience, what it is you want the audience to accomplish, and then how you're going to engage them in a dialogue. Is that true or is that false? I want you to stand up, lean back, and on the count of 3, either holler out true or false. So 1, 2, 3, stand up, And I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to lean back and tell me if you think this is true or if this is false. 1, 2, lean back. 1, 2, 3. It's false. Have a seat and let me tell you why. And I heard a few falses sprinkled out there. It's false, and let me tell you why. This is a little bit of a trick, so don't throw your burritos at me or anything. The number one reason adults will listen to you is they know why they should listen to you. So all of that about who's in the audience and how we're going to engage in a dialogue and what is it they'll be able to accomplish and how I'm going to articulate my message. Yes, those are key in establishing your presence, your executive presence. But if you do not tell that audience why it should bother to listen to you, you haven't established an executive presence. So the 5 A's of executive presence are as follows. 1, yes, articulation. How will you articulate your message? And we will go in depth with each one of these. 2, what is it you want the audience to accomplish? What is it will they be able to do once we finish with our meeting, with the presentation? Next, activities. That's the dialogue. That's the writing. That's the engagement the audience has with the information you provide. Next, of course, who's in the audience? But we're going to take it a couple of steps further than just who's in the audience. But there's some more questions we must answer when it comes to the audience. And then finally, this is the one that was missing from the poll question, ambiance. In order to have this presence of commanding the room, part of it requires that you create an ambiance. How many of you remember this thing? First off, do you know what that circle is? I know, yeah. Mood ring. Remember mid-1970s, 1975, it came, you have a look on your face where it's like, mood ring, what is that? Have you heard of a mood ring? Oh my goodness. That thing was all, am I alone on this one? That thing was all the rage. Okay, before I go into my spiel of how much the mood ring was so cool. When you put it on, there was this substance in it, and it would change colors depending on the temperature of your body. And if it was a cool blue, that meant you were cool, you were good. But if it was a hyper yellow, a blazing orange, then you need to get somewhere and settle down and drink a bottle of water. What you're doing with ambiance is you are creating a mood. You are creating a purpose for your presentation. The first thing you must do is sit back and say to yourself, what is the relevance of this presentation? Never present just for the sake of presenting, but say to yourself, how does it fit with the bigger picture? What is going on in the department, in the company, in the world? What is going on with my teammates? What do they have on their minds that is particularly important to them right now? And then how does my presentation align with what's important to them? What is the relevance? Don't meet to meet. And then what do you bring to the table? A title is not enough. You'll hardly ever hear me say a title. You'll hardly ever hear me say what my title is. That doesn't matter, because you want to know what you want to know? You want to know, Bridget, what is it you do that helps me with what I do? That's all you want to know. And so stepping up and saying, I am the such and such of such and such and so, that doesn't tell me what you do that helps me be better at what I do. So in creating ambiance, and I'll demonstrate it for you in a second, make sure you clarify what it is you bring to the table. And in short, you have to clarify why everybody should care. Why should people turn over their power to you? You see, time is a person's most precious commodity. And when a person turns over his or her time to you, she or he is turning over power to you. And you have to be very respectful of that. So you must clarify very quickly why the audience should care. You'll recall how I started this presentation. There are some people to whom you can listen for hours on end. Maybe it's an anchor, maybe it's a politician, maybe it's your favorite recording artist, and if you knew what they did, then you could be explosive. By the time we're done, you're going to have a strategy. By the time we're done, you're going to know how to be fierce. By the time we're done, you're going to be all that and a bag of chips, and then this is how we're going to do it. Remember that? Before I even told you my name, I told you what you were going to get out of this. I told you what you were going to get that was going to make you better than you already are. Does that make sense? And see what this does. Then when I hit you with the number one thing you got to do to get adults to listen to you, I tell you you're going to know the 5-step process. And when I tell you all of that, and when you do that for your audiences, guess what it is? It's an attitude adjuster. Let me explain. You will have some people who come into meetings, and you may be one of those people, who says, I could be doing so many other things right now. This had better be a good use of my time. What is this about anyway? Now, I know none of you said that this morning, but this is an attitude adjuster. When you lay out very clearly and command the room as to what's going to take place and what are the benefits to the audience, it gets those attitudes thinking more positively. Now, we could have started the presentation like this. Howdy, it's good to see you. Today, we'll cover presentation skills. Let's get started. Could have done that, but there's nothing exciting about that. But then we could have done this. Do you believe everybody can make great presentations? When you hear the word presentation, some of you may think, there's nothing to it. Others, you may clam up. Either way, you think in terms of good presentations or bad presentations. By the end of this session, you'll know how to start your presentation in an impactful way. You'll know how to keep your cool the entire time so you can look and sound like the powerhouse that you are. Now, which one would you attend? You would attend the second one. Do you know why you would attend the second one? Because I am letting you and you and you and you know exactly what you're going to get out of it. Notice all of those you references I have in there. When you start presentations, when you start meetings, you let them know you're going to be able to do this and you're going to know that and you're going to be able to rock this out and you're going to be able to lead this and make this happen. Use as many yous as you possibly can. Take the focus off of I and put it on the audience as to what it is the audience will accomplish. That establishes executive presence. Make sure you are establishing the relevance of the presentation, the relevance of the meeting, clarify what it is you offer, and then give them a reason to care. Give them a reason as to why all of this matters. Now let's move on to number 2, which is the audience. In those college speech classes that we took, the professor told us, make sure you know who's in the audience. And that's nice. That's just the baseline. Yeah, you need to know that. We're going to push it a few steps further. Not only do you want to know who is in the audience, but you also want to know how will you help them. Because it's not just about talking, but it's about helping and transforming. And then think about what questions do they have? What challenges might they have? What's not going well in their areas? What is really tough right now? What is consuming their time? What is stressing them out? And then, now this one's real slick. Know which questions you will answer and which ones you will save until later. Because see, let me tell you something. You do not have to answer every single question that's thrown out every single time. Bridget, really? How is that so? You can have strategies in place where that's a very good question. In the interest of time, you and I will discuss it offline. That's code for, I don't know the answer right now. But when you have executive presence, you don't say you don't have the answer. Checking? You don't say you don't have the answer. That's a fantastic question. But because it is specific to you and not the rest of the room, let's you and I have a conversation one-on-one. That's executive presence. Let's move to number 3, accomplishments. What is it that the audience will know or be able to do by the time you finish rocking the microphone? What will the audience know or be able to do once you finish? This is huge. This isn't the huge one I was talking about earlier, but this one is huge. I go back to the point about you're up here offering transformation and you're up here offering change. So you want the audience to be able to do something differently after having heard you. You want the audience to be able to add to its arsenal of tools, to its arsenal of expertise, and to have something new that helps everyone do his or her job better, more efficiently, more effectively. Ask, what is it that everyone will know or be able to do? Now, this is highly important because of this nasty thing called information overload. You can be very tempted to give them everything that you have to share. Oh. And then you have this negative effect of information overload where not much of anything you said sticks. You see, what you know about your industry, or your division, or if you've gotten a new mandate, if you've gone to a conference, whatever the case may be, all of your expertise, your knowledge, your education, all of that, it's almost like a buffet. And the human mind is like a buffet plate. And it is only going to hold on to so much information. It's only going to be able to capture and retain and make sense of so much information. So if you throw everything at them, that becomes problematic. I have an activity for you. What you're going to do is view a list of words on the next slide. And you'll take 15 seconds to memorize as many of them as you can. And then you'll take 15 seconds to write down as many of them as you remembered. So first, 15 seconds to memorize the words, and then 15 seconds to write them down. So we can demonstrate or have a nice little illustration of this information overload concept. Time starts now for memorizing the words. How well did you do? How many got? 10 words. 8, 7, okay, 6. Okay, let's try another list. That's not incredibly fantastic, and that's okay. It's not your fault. Let's try 5 words. Oh, okay. I'm hearing someone in distress. And part of ensuring that everything goes well is I need to pay attention to what's going on in the audience. And so I just want to make sure. Here's your second list. 15 seconds starts now. Did you do better? Yeah. Do you know why you did better? There were categories? Yeah. Now let's translate this into executive presence and making sure that you avoid information overload. The working memory is limited in capacity, and it works better when information is chunked, when it is provided in categories, when it is provided in an organized fashion. When we're just throwing information at an audience, that's not executive presence, and we can run the risk of information overload. Back in the middle of the 20th century, it was thought that the human brain can hold on to about 7 chunks of information at any given point. Around 1956, research was done by George A. Miller. Now that we're in the 20th century, we're thinking it's closer to 3 or 4 chunks of information at any one time. Can we hold on to information? And anything that goes beyond that just falls off. Kind of like going back to that analogy with our buffet plate. If you try to squeeze any more onto that plate, eventually food's going to start falling off of that plate, and it's not going to stick with your audience. So you have a couple of options when it comes to your presentations and having a presence about yourself. One option is you can share as much information as you can. And you've heard people say things like, this is going to be a lot of information, so I hope you have pen and paper, get ready to take a lot of notes. That's not impressive. Stop doing that. Because you can share as much information as you can, or you can be strategic about what you share and make sure that what you're sharing is actually sinking in. And maybe there are some instances where information needs to be in an email. Maybe it needs to be in a PowerPoint, a manual. Maybe it doesn't need to be a presentation. You can hope that the information sticks and cross your fingers, or you can be strategic and know that it sticks. The option that's going to have you with a presence about yourself, or at least the right presence, is going to be option number 2, where you're feeling confident that your information is sticking, where you're being very selective about what you provide, where you're not hoping to overwhelm the audience. See, people will do that because it's like, I'm going to show just how smart I am. No, you just look like you're trying to impress somebody. Just reel it back. You're at a 10, you need to be at about a 6 right now. And think about the audience's needs. Make it a two-way street. Share a chunk of information and then give the audience time to think about that information. What exactly does this mean? How will I use this? How does this impact the work that I do? You see, your audience is hearing this information for the first time. You've probably had time to mull over it, send a few emails back and forth with some colleagues, read it again. You may have created a PowerPoint. You've had time with this information. But your audience members are getting this for the first time. They need that time to think about, what does this mean? And if you talk without chunking your information, where you give a piece and then you transition, give a piece, then you transition, give the audience time to think about it. If you talk without chunking, it's almost like turning on a faucet and having your audience just drink from that faucet without having a chance to stop and swallow and breathe and ask a question. Commit to solve only about 3 to 5 problems for your audience as you're trying to figure out exactly how to chunk this information. 3 to 5 problems for your audience. What does the audience need to know or need to be able to do with this information? That's a question to ask yourself. Is this information that the audience even really needs? Is this something where it's just extra? If somebody just happens to want more info, then he or she can come to my office and we can further discuss. But what exactly does the audience need to do, be able to do with this information? What are the audience's 3 to 5 biggest challenges, biggest problems, biggest needs, biggest responsibilities, where this information is going to support them in the work that they do? And then finally, answer or solve just that and give only what they must know, as opposed to turning on that fire hose, that fire hydrant, and giving them everything. I know there's a sense of responsibility where you feel like, I need to give them everything. No, you need to give them exactly what they need to have in order to perform at peak levels. That's what needs to happen. So give them only what they must know. And if there are questions, if there is additional information that's required, then you have another presentation. You schedule another meeting. You have a phone call. You have a webinar, and so on. Number 4 is activity. How do you draw the audience into the conversation? Pretend there is a poll in the room, and on this side of the room is the strongly agree side of the poll, and on this side of the room is the strongly disagree side of the poll. I am going to put up a sentence completer, and you'll move to this side if you strongly agree with the completion of the sentence that I offer, or that side if you strongly disagree. So the best audience engagement is where, or the best audience activity is where everyone gets to answer the question of, are there any questions? Do you strongly agree that that's one of the best ways to engage your audience, or do you strongly disagree? If you agree, get up and move over here. Get up and move over here. Get up and nobody ever wants to move when I do this. I don't know. I've got to switch this up. Or move over there if you strongly disagree. And I even had somebody just do this. Practicing her airline attendant moves. Strongly. Okay. All right. The middle of the room is an option. That's a good question. The middle. No, that's a good question. That's a good. And if you are somewhat neutral, where you say, yeah, it's a good idea, but not the best, then the middle of the room. And then I have a couple of agrees. Let me think. Where do I want to start? I want to start with strongly agree. She has this deer caught in headlights look about where she's like, she's not coming over here, and she's not coming to me, is she? Either one of you. Why do you strongly agree with, that's the best option? You get feedback from the person you're talking to, okay? And I'm getting closer just so you can get close to my mic. I should have brought the handheld with me. Okay, so you get feedback. Okay, very good. Thank you, Rachel. Terrell. You have the largest amount of people receiving information. Okay, interesting perspectives. Thank you. It's exactly what I need. Even better, he offered to be my runner. This place just gets better and better by the second. I'd like to hear from my neutral party. Tell me your name, please.
Keola. I usually project without a microphone, but my name is Keola. Hi, everybody. The reason why I went more middle of the road is that, for me anyway, it's dependent on the audience and sometimes time constraints, and also the consideration that you can't please everybody all of the time.
Fair enough, fair enough. Now I want to hear from someone who strongly disagrees. I don't know where to start. I hardly have anyone from whom to pick. Someone who strongly disagrees. Tell me your name.
My name is Tracy Latham.
Thank you, Tracy.
I think people are afraid to answer questions. Ask them.
Yes.
So they're not going to.
Oftentimes, when you ask, are there any questions, what kind of response do you get? Crickets. Do you know why? It's the get beat up on the playground question. Back in elementary school, the teacher would ask, are there any questions? You're sitting up front, you anxiously have one, but there's somebody in the back who says, if you ask a question, you are cutting into my recess time, and it's going to be you and me by the swing set, buddy. I'm kidding. The are there any questions leaves it too broad. It's too open. I have a million questions. I don't know where to start. Or I'm not really sure how to articulate the question. I don't want to sound silly. There's so many reasons. So it's not the best way. But for some of the reasons you stated, it is an option, but not the best. Okay, fantastic. Next one. The best audience activity is to have discussions and hear other audience members' points of view. Is that one of the best ways for audience engagement? Strongly agree, strongly disagree. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. Let me hear from someone in the middle. Raise your hand, and we will hear some. Okay, I'm about to volunteer somebody.
I'm kind of neutral on this one because I think it also goes back to your audience.
Yeah.
I think if you have, maybe a group of HR professionals, they're probably going to be a lot more adept to engage in conversations, whereas if you have a group of IT guys, they probably just want, the facts. Not to stereotype on groups,
okay.
But not to stereotype on groups, but just to give examples for my neutrality.
Right.
Yes, just to give examples.
Okay, fantastic.
So it depends on the audience.
Depends on the audience. Thank you, Nicolette.
I'd say as a presenter, you have an opportunity to check in with them to see if your point is hitting home with them, to see whether or not you have an opportunity to then transition, maybe in specifying some of your key points, transitioning the mindset to see if they're catching on to what you're picking up, what you're throwing down.
Picking up what you're throwing down. I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Last one. The best audience activity is when everyone gets to move back and forth across the room like this, so everybody's so discombobulated until nobody notices whether you have an effective presentation or not. Have a seat. Thanks for participating. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we're done. With your presentation, you can just check the boxes. You can just do that. But geez Louise, wouldn't that be boring? When you check the boxes, you're just covering material. Yep, we got that agenda item done, moving on. Yep, we got that done. And we're not checking to make sure that it's sinking in. We're not checking to make sure that it's cool. Or we're not paying attention to the body language. And you can tell when people are not getting it. And so you stop and you engage the audience. When you facilitate engagement with the information, that shows executive presence. It shows that your voice is not the only one that matters in the room. When you shine the spotlight on other people, the spotlight ends up shining on you. When you facilitate engagement with the information, then that is a characteristic of someone with executive presence. So what you should do as you're planning your presentations is think about what are the steps that are going to get us to the end product that we have to accomplish, that we want to accomplish in this meeting. At the end of the meeting, I want everybody to know or be able to do this. And what are the steps that we're going to take to get there? So does this mean that my audience is going to discuss? Maybe have a 3, 2, 1 shout out. Maybe stand if they know the answer to something. Or if it's a smaller setting, maybe it's just they're going to write down information. Am I going to have my audience reviewing something or reading something? Or am I going to have my audience getting up and moving around? It just depends on your audience, your presentation style, and your own personality, where it fits for you to have discussions with your team members. And that is a part of executive presence where you turn off your microphone for a second and you let others talk. A part of executive presence is you have people jotting things down, or you have people reviewing information, or you have people moving about. But make sure you get a chance to step back and get the audience to interact with the information. Now, back to this hydrant point. If you don't do that, it's like them sipping from a hydrant. Our two-way street is the recommendation I have, rather, for continuing to have this two-way street opportunity is you should speak for no more than about 10 to 15 minutes at a time. That is not a hard and fast rule, but speak for about 10 to 15 minutes at a time and then give your audience 3 to 5 minutes to think about that new information. Because imagine some of the information you provide, the statistics and the data and the graphs and the research, and just think about how mind-blowing some of that information can be. And so your audience needs a little bit of time to think about what that information means. 10 to 15 minutes is not a hard and fast rule before you have the audience engaging in the information. It's not hard and fast. You know your audience. So when you start to see the glazed donut look, it's time to have them talk to a neighbor about something. Because if you don't, you run the risk of this ugly, nasty thing called information overload. So again, have your audiences discussing, writing, reading, reviewing, and moving. Next, and this was that big one, articulate. Articulate your message. Let me tell you something. Ensure the first time you hear your presentation or the first time you hear what's going to come out of your mouth for a meeting, ensure the first time is not when you're right there at that meeting or right there in that presentation. I am here to tell you the main reason people are nervous, the main reason there's anxiety is because you've never heard the words before. You've thought about them in your head, but you have not heard them. You have not heard the actual words you will say. And so it is hard to command a room if you have not heard exactly what it is you're going to communicate to that audience. And I'm not talking about mentally going through your slide deck. I'm not talking about mentally thumbing through the agenda. But I want you to actually hear the words beforehand, so articulate that presentation before you show up. And I'm talking about full-on gestures, emotions, and everything. You need to be able to see the body language that you're going to give that audience. You cannot get up there and practice executive presence right there. You practice it in private. You practice it in private and know the emotions that you plan on conveying to your audience. Emotions can be a tough thing especially when you are working in a very black and white environment or industry where there's just not a lot of color to it. There are some industries where it is what it is, right? Let's work on some emotions to get you ready for the office today. Stand, and with a partner, I want you to face each other about shoulder width apart from each other, and you're going to act out an emotion that I put on the screen. No words, no anything, just act out the emotion. So stand up, and I'm going to put a word up on the screen, and I want you to act out. You can get into pairs or you can get into triads. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. I want to make it easy for you. Here's the first one. Here's the first one. Next one. I even saw a little bounce in someone. What do you do? What work are you in? Next. Okay. And the last one. Yes. Have a seat. I want you to keep that feeling. Remember when we talked about the paradigm shift? We've got to do that first before we can have the executive presence. I want you to be excited about everything you have to share with your team, even if it's bad news, because I understand that happens. The excitement part is, this is tough right now, but what I'm excited about is we're strong enough to get through this. This is tough right now, but what I'm excited about is things will be better. So no matter what the news is, no matter what is the message, I want you to be excited about this opportunity to grow people in front of you. So have a sense of excitement for what's about to come when you are about to get on that stage and take to that microphone. I need you to avoid just going through the motions or mentally running through your presentation, but I need you to perform full out, aloud, your entire presentation with all of the emotions as if your audience is right there with you. That is what real practice looks like. That is what, not with family, not with friends. There's a whole psychology behind that. Don't get me started. You just need to do it by yourself because you know what sounds good and what doesn't. You know what looks good and what doesn't. You know what's going to resonate with your team and what won't. And you know the look that you want to have about yourself when you're giving that presentation. Your vocal command is incredibly important. Now, you can have a level 1 vocal command, and that's just enough to keep people halfway interested. It's the vocal command that you would use if you were in a 1-on-1 or 1-to-2 situation where you're having an intimate conversation, and that's okay, but that's not ideal when you want to have an executive presence about yourself when you're making a presentation. Because as time goes on, your presentation is 60 minutes, your meeting is 30 minutes, your voice is going to start to sink, your energy goes down. So then if you started with a level 2 vocal command, that's pretty good, but you'll notice with our chart here, you're still going to dip below that boredom line. That line of interest is gone. So when you have a level 3 vocal command, and that means you are articulating, you're smiling when you're talking, you're making eye contact, then that is where you want to be, because if your voice trails off, and it will, if your energy trails off, and it will, then you're still going to be above the interested line. That's where you want to have your vocal command when you're articulating your message. And then you don't stay there the entire time. Absolutely not. What you do is with each new agenda item, you reset your voice so you're back at a level 3 vocal command. And you do that throughout your meeting so you're giving the illusion of being at level 3 the entire time. You don't just let that energy sink and just let it keep sinking like the Titanic. Pick it back up. You get in a life raft. Now I have a lightning round of, those are the 5 steps. Those are your 5 steps. I have a lightning round for you of small details that are going to make you a standout communicator and a standout leader when you make presentations. Here goes. I want you to constantly watch what other fantastic presenters do. So here's my first point with the lightning round. Never say, come on, you can do better than that. This is what I mean. You've seen people do it. Somebody will walk on the stage and they'll say, good morning, and the audience says, good morning. Come on, you can do better than that. I said good morning. You know what I'm talking about? You've seen that before. Don't do that. That sends so many messages to the audience. It says to the audience, your good morning was stinky. You need to do it again. You're inadequate. I'm mad that you didn't welcome me any better than that. It just starts on a negative note. Check it out. You haven't done anything to get the audience hyped. Why are you expecting some boisterous good morning? Chill out. Just take what you get. And then you get up there and you rock it out. Next, always face your audience when you speak. You'll see sometimes people, they'll start writing on a board or something like that, and they'll keep talking. People cannot hear you. That's not executive presence. Always face your audience. Always face your audience when you speak. Avoid saying, did everyone hear that? Let's say someone says something, and then you say, did everyone hear that? If you feel compelled to ask if everyone heard that, then it's obvious somebody didn't. Avoid saying, everybody knows what X is, and then just keep going. No, it's possible there's someone who doesn't know what X is, and I guarantee you, he or she is not going to say, I don't. Very seldom, you may have a brave soul, but very seldom will you have someone who will say, I don't know. Just give them the info. Similarly, avoid saying, you probably don't know this, but there might be somebody who does know it. And I'm telling you, this is just years of me doing presentations and watching other people do presentations. Beware of how much you ask the audience to do at any one point in time. True story, I attended a luncheon, and the presenter wanted us to fill out the evaluations. She also told us to get ready for a prize drawing. They had a raffle. And she told us the date and time of the next luncheon. And she told us we needed to give a round of applause to thank the restaurant that catered the luncheon. And she said all of this in the span of a very short amount of time. So do we complete the evaluation? Do we put down our pens and applaud? Or do we write down the date of the next luncheon? Or do we listen for our names to be called for the... I don't know what to do. Be careful how much you have the audience do at one time. Know how to properly use the clicker. Don't... Never let them see you sweat. No matter what you do, no matter if you have a hard time parking your car in the garage, if you if you get lost, if your slides aren't showing up right, if the video doesn't play right, if you, doesn't matter. Never let them see you sweat. Does that make sense? Yes. My promise to you was you would know the number one thing you must do to get adults to listen to you. And I also told you were going to know how to have a rock-solid handle for owning the stage. And I told you would get that 5-step guide, and you would get that paradigm shift, and you would have a way to have executive presence when you present. So what you need to win when you're getting in front of your audiences is establish an ambiance. Know who's in that audience. Have activity. Make sure you know what it is you want that audience to accomplish when you finish, and then articulate your message well before you articulate it for your audience. Now you have a choice. You can take what I gave you and throw it out the window and completely ignore it, or you can decide, I'm going to do something with this. I've set aside time for the next couple of days to sit down with you and personally discuss how you can take what I just shared with you and put it in place with your presentations. Whatever your biggest challenges are, I've seen them, and I can help you fix them. I will help you on this session craft a personal plan so you can get over your biggest presentation challenges, so you can make presentations with executive presence, and the cost is absolutely free. If you want to schedule a time with me, 30 minutes, so we can figure out exactly how to get you to the point where you are rocking stages and taking what I gave you this morning, then please sign up for your free call with me, and we're going to make it the best 30 minutes you ever spent working on your presentation skills. I absolutely guarantee it. Last activity, and then we're going to wrap this up. You've gotten a lot of information from me. Now what do we do? Now what do we do? Stand to your feet. Last activity. I want you to prepare to count from 1 to 3 with your partner, and you're going to alternate between each other. So one person says 1, the other says 2. One says 3, the other says, you got it? Go back and forth between each other just like that. Hit it. Now, I want you to clap for 1. So it'll be 2, 3, 2, 3. Don't say 1. Clap for 1, snap for 2. Hit it. Clap for 1, snap for 2, stomp for 3. That's why I only want 2 people. How did you do? How did you do? Have a seat, have a seat. The point is, you have to find your rhythm. You have to decide what works for you in establishing executive presence. Maybe it means you clap. Maybe it means you snap. Maybe it means you stomp. You decide what works best for your personal style, and then you're able to rock it out. Listen, you've been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to hand it back over to Patty. Thank you.